If I was smarter, I would have waited to write and film my best books of the year lists after I read this. Because I had a feeling this was going to be a great novel, but I didn't. If I had, this book would have been on it. This would have made the cut for my best books of the year list, and honestly, it probably would have fallen somewhere in the middle of my top 10. 5, 4... I can't remember what was number 10, but then that would have been pushed out. Sorry, number 10. Oh well, I read it now, and it's absolutely wonderful. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin is a wonderful novel that's kind of difficult to categorize. I suppose you would call it a piece of commercial fiction. It's accessible, it's relatable, it is very much about life. It is a grounded novel about the life story of a trio of people. Technically a duo, but the third character plays such a large role that you could call it a trio. As someone who was born in and raised through the 90s, and who has grown up on video games and remains someone who plays video games every single day, this is certainly a book for me. It is set during the 90s about a pair of budding video game designers. Oh, that's where I put my bookmark. When we first meet them, it's 1987, and they're two young kids in a hospital in Los Angeles. Sadie is there visiting her older sister, who unfortunately has cancer. And Sam is there because he was in a horrible car accident that really damaged his foot. His foot is broken in multiple places, and that broken foot plays a part in the novel all the way through. They meet in the games room of the hospital, and they're playing video games together, and they bond over their shared love of video games. But because kids can be very bad at making and keeping and maintaining healthy friendships because they're kids, the two of them end up falling out over something that's pretty sad, and life moves on. Then when the novel really begins, the two of them are both at university in Massachusetts. She's at MIT, and he is at Harvard, and the two of them bump into each other in Boston. For her course, Sadie has been designing small indie games, and Sam plays one of them after she hands it to him, and he is utterly amazed, and then all he wants to do is make a game with her. And this is their story, about going from university students with big dreams and ambitions to budding and then successful game designers. The third character that I mentioned is Sam's roommate, a guy called Marks. He's a theatre student, he's popular with the women, he's a serial monogamist, and he ends up becoming their producer. He has a lot of good ideas and good input, but he is not an artist or a designer or a coder, but he has a role to play in their business, and of course, in their personal and social lives. Very early in the story, Sadie also enters into a sexual relationship with her professor, who is very impressed with the work that she's doing as a designer. So this is a messy novel about life, about what it's like as a university student, especially a very talented one, about our messy social lives, about the romances we get involved with, about how friendships come and go, they ebb and flow, we fall out and reunite. It's about the waves that life moves through. But because, as I said, I love the video games industry for my sins, because it's a horribly corrupt place, these people being game designers, game developers, artists, was something that really spoke to me. They could have been anything. These two people start a business together. They are passionate, creative people. They could have been different kinds of artists. They could have started a rock band. They could have been musicians, and it would have worked just fine. But instead, this is the 90s, and this is the wild, booming growth of the video games industry. So it's a very exciting time. It's a time that I know a lot about. And there are, of course, a lot of references to the games that pushed the medium forward through the 90s. Gabrielle Zevin clearly knows a lot about video games, a lot about the way that the industry functions, and specifically functioned and grew through the 90s, and that really helps ground the novel in a sense of place and time, in a specific industry, in a creative medium. It's all there. It's all very grounded. It's all very well maintained. The illusion that you are growing through the novel, through the 90s, through this industry with these characters, it is all perfectly maintained from beginning to end. And just because Sadie and Sam are two straight people, a boy and a girl, you are kind of waiting for them to maybe get together and confess their feelings to each other. You feel like this must be a romance. Because there is love and sex and heartbreak in this novel, you think, well, eventually they'll realize they love each other, right? That has to happen. That's what I was waiting for all the way through. I'm a romantic, I'm a sucker for a good romance subplot, or main plot, and I was just waiting for it. And I'm not going to tell you, one way or another. I will only say that the novel is satisfying all the way through, and I was very surprised by some of the events in it. There is comedy here, but there is also a lot of tragedy. A lot of tragedy. That hits in ways that you wouldn't expect, that comes from places you wouldn't expect. It's a very contemporary novel in terms of how it handles race and class and religion and gender as well. For example, Sam, Sadie, and Marks are all Asian American people. Sam grew up very, very poor in Koreatown in Los Angeles, while Sadie grew up in Beverly Hills. Marks grew up in Tokyo to a Japanese family, and so they come from different walks of life. And the fact that Sam is also disabled, his foot causes him constant issues all the way through the book. It's lovely to see an ethnically diverse group of characters in modern America, one of whom is disabled. All of them have gone through tragedy, but they remain hopeful creatives. There isn't enough disability appreciation and awareness in literature, in modern film and video games, etc. And it's really nice to see that in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And for a book to nail the industry and the creative process of video game design is also really exciting. If, like I said earlier, these people had been members of a rock band, or even actors on a stage working on a film or a play, it would have been something that had already been done. But seeing the video game industry represented here instead, it's just not something you see very often. I just read a novel recently about a group of actors and their interpersonal relationships, and that was If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, which is now one of my favourite books of all time. This is similar because it's about a group of creatives, but this is the video games industry. It's a modern novel. And the fact that it's set in the 90s, during this very specific boom of growth in that industry, where the tech was moving incredibly quickly, and game design was about creativity, about pushing genres, creating new genres, pushing the tech forward, having really wild ideas when it comes to narrative, design, and mechanics. All of that is explored here by these people. In one of the games that they create, and they create a whole bunch of games all the way through the novel, in one of those games it talks about the idea of being able to leave and say goodbye to the game. It's an MMORPG, a World of Warcraft style game. And there's a mechanic where instead of you just getting exhausted by the game and eventually just stopping, you can actually say goodbye to the game. You can give your character a funeral or have them leave town. You actually remove yourself from the world rather than just stop playing. And I was amazed by that. I was like, why have I never seen that in a game before? That's a really cool idea. I hope a game designer reads this novel and goes, yeah, we need to implement that. That's a really cool concept. Like during the first lockdown and I and everyone else in the world was playing Animal Crossing, I just stopped. I hope my islanders are okay. They're not okay. But it would have been cool if I could have said goodbye and sailed off to the horizon. I just stopped. So I thought that was a really cool thing. It's also impressive the scope of this novel. I didn't realize just how many years we would pass through as we read. This is a novel that treads a lot of ground in terms of time and space as we move from one coast to another and back again. There's a lot explored here. We spend a lot of time with this small group of people. We learn everything about them. We watch them change. We watch them become hopeful and then jaded and then hopeful again. We watch their relationships shift. We watch them go through moments of grief and fear and longing and disappointment. It is a saga of human experience. And all the while you're watching them be artists and creatives, writers, designers. It's really, really cool. I'm very impressed with the scope of this novel. I love the fact that it's about the video games industry. I love these people and their human flaws and their broken relationships and their hope and what they do for one another. I think that's the coolest thing about this novel, looking at what these people do for each other, how they change each other's lives. The importance of creating a community, a family, a group of friends, and what that gives you as a business, as a creative outlet, as a social life, everything. It's just the importance of people helping people and building something together. Absolutely gorgeous. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is a wonderful novel. I'm really glad I read it right at the end of the year. It felt like a nice way to kind of cap off this year. And as I said, it would have appeared in my best of year list if I'd thought better. I don't think good. Anyway, it's great. Check it out and subscribe for books.